Hi there guys, and welcome to another episode of the Cover Zero Show with me, your host Simon Conboy. If you've been tuning in for the last few Tuesdays, then you know what this episode is going to be. Another episode of my top 100 players in the NFL. If you've not seen one of these before, what I'll be doing is breaking down last night's episode, who the players revealed on their list, critiquing some of those decisions as necessary, and then revealing my own list and the reasons those players made the list and why I put them where they are. So, put it simply, we'll hop right in with player number 50 on the players list, Tennessee Titans QB Marcus Mariota. Personally, he did not make my list. I think this is far too high. I've got no doubt there are significantly less quarterbacks on my list than on this players list. Last week they revealed Jameis Winston. I spoke about in my first episode that for me, player 100, I wanted to put one of those two QBs in. My reasoning for going with Jameis Winston, and I think you'll be able to see this as a general trend in the way I've positioned a lot of the quarterbacks, is that I will tend to favour the player who I feel did, in the case of what I think is pretty much a push. I think both players had very successful seasons. I will edge towards the player who did more with less. And for me, that was Jameis Winston. At the end of the day, whilst I think the Tennessee Titans offense was superior to the Buccaneers offense last season, I think that's because Marcus Mariota had a superior supporting cast, i.e. an actual offensive line and run game performing at a very high level. Buccaneers had neither of those, massive injuries in terms of the running backs. The offensive line was underwhelming. I think the Titans have a top 3 offensive line in this league, behind perhaps only Dallas, possibly the Steelers, maybe the Raiders at this point in time. It's a great unit. It's very young. I expect them to continue to improve. DeMarco Murray was great. Derrick Henry provided another option at the position. And in spite of that, whilst I think Mariota was very efficient, he wasn't much more than a game manager at times. I feel he should have had a bit more success considering the quality around him. Even if the receiving corps isn't great, I think he could have done a bit more. So for that reason, I selected Jameis over him. Mariota did not make my list. You could certainly argue he should be in a top 100 players in the NFL list, but number 50, I think that's far too high. I mean, we saw Zach Martin revealed last week, and you could easily argue that he's the top interior lineman, if not lineman, in all of football. And you're going to say a quarterback that probably wouldn't crack the top 10 at this point in time for most people is a superior player. That's one of the issues I have with this list constantly, the overvaluing of the quarterback position. Mad respect for Mariota. You know, last year I thought he significantly improved, particularly with regards to the deep ball, where in his rookie season he was atrocious throwing the ball deep. Last year significantly improved in that aspect. Still does a great job protecting the football. Doesn't run around as much as myself, and I guess most would have thought coming out of college, which I think is not so much testament to how he's going to be used in the future, but more him being forced into trying to learn to be a pocket QB first, which I think for the long term is the right approach to take. I think as he gets more used to the NFL game, we'll see him scrambling more, not necessarily on design plays, but rather like Russell Wilson, taking broken plays and making success out of them when the option is there. Certainly a very good player. Far too high in my opinion, as I say, did not crack my list personally. Myself at number 50, I've got a player who had a breakout season last year, Jay Ajayi, the running back for the Miami Dolphins. He was revealed recently on the players list just last week, so we're pretty much in agreement as to around where he should rank. Without him last year, I'm not sure the Dolphins would have come close to sniffing the playoffs. The offense, when it was effective, it went through him. Of course, he had those monstrous back-to-back games against the Steelers and the Bills, but even if you discount those games, still had an incredibly productive season. Really showed what a great power back he can be. At times was just impossible for guys in the secondary to bring him down one-on-one. He's faster than I thought he would be, at this level. Certainly managed to make a lot of big runs last year. If you look at the Bills game that they won right in overtime, backed up to their own goal line, him getting to about midfield, that was all burst. I don't think his top end speed is elite, but it's certainly good enough. And when you combine that with his burst and his power, and he showed great vision as well last season, you've got a recipe for a very successful running back. The reason I've got him this low is I don't think he's a great asset in the passing game. If I could see him improve that aspect, and that's both blocking and receiving, then I think he becomes one of the most dynamic running backs in the league at this point in time. So that's what I'm going to be looking for from him next season. I think that would really help separate him from some of the other solid backs in the league, and start contending for being in the discussion for one of the absolute top running backs in football. But either way, he did a great job last year. I think this Dolphins team should improve next year, and he'll have a lot of opportunities to improve upon what he did last year. So, coming in at number 49 on the players list, this is one me and the players were pretty close on, Jadeveon Clowney. So I had him ranked at 55, so not a huge disparity there. I feel this one surprised me. I didn't expect him to be this high on the players list. I know, of course, big name, drafted first overall. I think that always helps. It keeps you in people's memory for a far longer period of time. Bit of a slow start last year, but he really did take off. One of the best run defenders in the league on the edge, possibly behind Khalil Mack, maybe a couple of others, but he's certainly right up there. That's, to me, the real strength of his game. As a pass rusher, he's not quite got the finish to him yet. He gets pressure, gets a decent amount of pressure. He's not quite got a quick move where he can beat a tackle almost immediately off of engagement, which you do need to get a lot of sacks in this league. But he plays with a lot of power, and whilst, as I say, I believe he's a bit raw, the upside is certainly there. You can see the athleticism finally after a few years in the league starting to flash last season, and I expect he should only continue to improve if he can stay healthy, in particular with JJ Watt coming back. Of course, JJ Watt is going to demand the most attention from any team that's playing against the Texans front, so his numbers could improve significantly. It's a great group they've got in that Texans front seven. So me and players, I will not criticise him for this. Pretty much around the same area where I had him. Myself, player number 49 was a player that I felt has flown under the radar over the vast majority of his career. And last year he had a real breakout season, tying for the league in interceptions, and that is the Chargers' Casey Hayward. I thought he was always a very solid corner whilst he was in Green Bay, very well suited to playing in his own type of scheme like the Chargers do. He's always been a willing tackler, although not the biggest guy, so he's never going to be an absolute monster in that regard, but he's clearly improved his studying of the game in the last couple of years. Does a great job not getting looked off, just hanging close enough to guys that he's in position to make a play on the ball. He just had, honestly, a truly superb season, especially after Verrett went down in October. I think he really stepped up what could have been a very weak secondary after that injury. Ended up playing pretty well over the course of the season. I think defensively the Chargers were a lot better than many would have thought. And Hayward was a big reason for that. Packers should never have let him go. It was a big miss. Clearly, based on the contract he got from the Chargers, I don't think teams valued him as highly as they perhaps should have. I think a lot of that comes down to the perception that you can find a lot of guys who can play the zone scheme, and whilst that might be true to a level, this guy's clearly got a lot more talent and ability to play well in that scheme, and I think he can play a bit of man for you, of course. To play as well as he did last year, you've got to be able to do both, but he does specialise in sitting in zones, reacting, reading QB's eyes, making plays on the ball. Did a fantastic job of that last year. Of course, 7 interceptions is always going to be an effective number, and didn't get beat too much either. I think he had a really great season. If he can continue that, he'll become a household name. Certainly deserves it. As I say, I feel he was an unsung hero for the Packers for a number of years. I imagine they must regret letting him go now at this point. We'll stick with Green Bay because the players then, at number 48, have placed Jordy Nelson. Again, this is one of those situations where I had him on my list. Whereabouts did I put him? Let's find out. I'm pretty sure he was a fair bit lower. Or have I not revealed him yet? No, yeah, there we go. I had him at 64. So, not an enormous disparity. Again, this is much like the QB situation. The players list certainly has a lot more receivers on it than my list likely does. I really like, to show the offensive linemen some love in my list. I think a lot of them deserve to be on there. I think Nelson's simply been pushed up as a result. One thing I am going to look to do once the players list is finished being revealed is some breakdowns showing the disparities between my list and the players list in terms of positions. Come up with the order that those players came in at each position on their list and mine. Look at some of the similarities and differences there. From a lot of the receivers I've seen, I think they've got Jordy Nelson about where I had him, probably ranked a little higher. I don't think he had his best season last year. Was very good in the red zone, getting the touchdowns. Of course, him and Aaron Rodgers have a fantastic connection. That's the real strength of his game. Him and Rodgers are always on the same page. The sort of timing routes that those two can do, possibly as good as any combination in the league. Of course, his physical skill set's very good, but it's not quite up there with some of the absolute top guys in the league. But he'll beat you with that understanding. He's a very sure-handed player, faster than he's ever gotten credit for, and just an all-round very, very good receiver. If he, outside of perhaps that awareness and intelligence, maybe not so many outstanding traits. He's a very, very good route runner, of course, but an all-round rock-solid player. As I say, I'll talk about him a bit more earlier on when he was revealed on my list. A solid shout. As I say, I think a bit high. Receivers tend to be overrated by the players. Myself at 48, I had the guard for the Oakland Raiders, big-time free agent signing from last season, Kelechi Osemele. Him and Donald Penn formed a superb tandem last year. Whilst the Raiders didn't have any truly outstanding running backs, it was a fairly effective grouping that they had there. Marshawn Lynch, I think, is going to love running behind those two. As I mentioned in my top guards list last week, Osemele is as good a run blocker as you get in the league right now. Perhaps not as mobile as some of the other guys, but I think more mobile than he looks. He is, of course, a gigantic player at that position, but he really does punish guys. I certainly would not want to be in a running lane that he is making his way towards. He makes a mess of people. Not content with simply moving a guy out of a lane, he will finish the play and plough the guy into the ground. Very good still in pass protection, as said before. Very difficult to move. I think he can be beaten with quickness, but that's a unfortunate effect. It's difficult. There's not a huge amount of great interior rushes in terms of that aspect, but I do think you can, if you've got one of those guys like a top three technique, they can try and take advantage of that. But at the end of the day, this guy, if he gets his hands on you, it's game over. Superb player, big part of why that offense really came alive last year. One of the top groups in the league. I think it's between him and Penn. They're the two best players, and what's a very good group. Really helped this team improve. Sticking with the offensive line, a player that I feel has been hugely underrated in this list, and again, this is simply due to being an offensive lineman, Trent Williams of the Redskins. This guy is one of the top few left tackles in the league without a doubt. Year in, year out over the last few seasons, he's been a Pro Bowl caliber player. I think Tyron Smith gets more hype than he does, partly because if he plays in Dallas, I personally would take Trent Williams over him myself. I think Williams has a better balance to his game. I think he's more consistent. He's a better run blocker, and he offers some real leadership to this team. No real holes in his game. I think he's as good as it gets at this position at this point in time. The Redskins group as a whole, I think, gets very much underrated. I think they've got 3 very good players there in Moses, Scherf and Trent Williams. That's, I think, the primary reason this team has been able to be so effective in the last couple of years. It's not just Kirk Cousins and a pretty good skill group. It's a good offensive line. If you don't have one, things don't work out. Trent Williams is superb. His feet are up there amongst the best tackles in the league, which, of course, you'll generally see will be the case with the top left tackles. But considering the size of the guy, it's very impressive. Great run blocker. He's got a lot of range, which you do need for the run blocking scheme used there. Just an absolute machine. I've got him a lot higher on my list. I have to critique the players for having him this low, but again, carrying on with point that's been made throughout this episode, and it's just going to keep on coming up as this list continues on. There's not enough O-linemen on the list. There's too many QBs and wide receivers. That just seems to be standard fare, every year. Myself, player number 47, another offensive tackle, already revealed on the players list a little while ago, Taylor Lewan of the Tennessee Titans. I think he's the vocal leader of that offense. Marcus Mariota doesn't seem to be the loudest guy. Players seem to gravitate towards Lewan. Of course, he's among the veterans on that offense. He is an incredibly young group there. Delaney Walker is probably by far the most experienced player on that team, on that side of the ball. I think last year was by far his best season as a pro. Really improved in pass protection. Didn't give up quite as many penalties. His discipline's improved, even if he has made a bit of a show about his attempts to improve in that regard, but he certainly did so. Very, very difficult to get around. He's a gritty type of player. He's one of those, and by gritty, doesn't jump off the screen with his athleticism like some of the other left tackles in the league do, but he just finds ways to get the job done. Plays hard every single play. One of the better run blockers at the position. Again, incredibly physical player, and you can tell that he loves his run blocking. I think he's a player that's going to continue to be a mainstay on the list, as I'll talk about him in one of the earlier episodes when he was revealed on the players list. I think he's one of the better young tackles in the league. Tennessee are going to throw a lot of money at him, and rightfully so. If he can continue to keep up that level of pass protection, because that, to me, he was good in pass protection last year, was exceptional. I want to see that kept up. If so, he could be even higher on this list next year for me, and hopefully for the players as well, if that is the case. Coming in at number 46 on the players list, another player I believe I've already revealed, one of the best players in the league, Michael Bennett. We've seen over the last few years, he's so integral to that Seahawks defensive line. Possibly the most important player on that defence, which is certainly debatable. Of course, you've got Earl Thomas, Cam Chancellor and Bobby Wagner there, and we've seen them all missing at some point. The defence doesn't look quite the same. But in terms of the front four, this is the guy. Plays the run superbly, has done ever since he entered the league. Improved each year as a pass rusher. Of course, it's often mentioned that he's utilised on the inside, but that's because it's such a useful skill to have a solid speed rusher that can line up as a free technique. It allows for a lot of versatility, especially when you've got guys like Cliff Averill who really kind of sell out and aren't great run defenders. You need really balanced guys like this. One of the reasons I rate him so highly is his all-round game. His burst seems to have just gotten better with age off the ball. Plays incredibly intelligently. He's very difficult to fool. You can see with the way he attacks rush lanes, the way he attacks passing lanes, he's got a good idea as to what teams are trying to do to defend him, and also what they're trying to do to execute the play that they're in. It's really hard to put into words how good this guy is. Heck of a player. I'm just trying to figure out where I had him on my list. I think he was a little bit lower. Or did he not make it? He may not have made it, partly because of injuries, but To be honest, I think this is about the right sort of position for him. I think he's absolutely essential to this defence and has been great for a long time now. So moving on my list, player number 46. Mentioned him last week as he was revealed on the players list. Thought he had a very solid season, certainly his best in Miami last year. And Ndamukong Suh maybe didn't show up quite as much because they were generally better than they have been. But I thought it was his most consistent year, and my biggest critique of Suh in the past has been that when he really wants to be, he's possibly as disruptive as anyone in the league, certainly close to. It's not always the case. Last year, though, the Dolphins are quite good. As a result, we got to see the best of Suh. Still, I think, as good a defensive tackle in the league against the run. It's just his strength, his ability to just hunker down, get penetration, or just hold up a double team is pretty much unmatched, especially when you consider how much pass rush he can get. You can't leave him one-on-one. He will overpower just about any guard in the league on a consistent basis. Maybe not the flashiest pass rusher compared to some of the other free techniques in the league, but he's relentless when he's on, a lot faster than he looks, and he punishes ball carriers, and I think he did show an improvement in his overall temperament last year, and I mean that in both an effort and in terms of some of the dirty plays we've seen from him in the past. So next up on my list, on the players list, Larry Fitzgerald, long-time Arizona Cardinals wide receiver. Nice to see him on the list. I don't think at this point in time he's a top 100 player in this league. I have the utmost respect for Larry Fitzgerald. He's one of the absolute best wide receivers I've ever seen. The way he's transitioned to be able to play on the inside later on in his career now is of incredible value, and of course his leadership there. I think especially with the youth in the Arizona receiving core, his experience is absolutely necessary. But at this point in time, he's just not quite of that caliber. Great run blocker, great effort player, still the safest pair of hands in the league. He's just not quite got that quickness to get constantly open as he used to do. Not necessarily a threat to beat you over the top like he once was. Still a very, very good player, but I don't feel he should. This is one of those where I feel he's made the list as a testament to the quality of his career, which, as I say, is of the highest tier. For me, easy first ballot Hall of Famer. But I don't think there's any reason to have him in the top 100 players at this point in time. As much as it kind of hurts me to say, because he has been one of my favourite players in the league for a while. I had one of his teammates coming in at number 45. That being Chandler Jones, also of the Cardinals, obviously, as I just pointed out. Thought last season was by far his best in the league since he was drafted by the Patriots. Really was playing like he had a point to prove, which I guess he did because he got that contract extension that New England clearly weren't interested in giving him. Always been a great run player. That didn't change last year. Got great penetration. He was used a lot more aggressively than he was in New England as a result. Got a lot of TFLs, but really added another dimension to his pass rush game, which had always been maybe slightly above average but not exceptional. Got incredible pressure last year, especially at a position where Arizona's been screaming out for a guy that can do that for a long time. He really delivered in that regard. The sack numbers were very good. Could have been more. I mean, he was as disruptive on a play-by-play basis as it gets. As I say, I like my balanced players who contribute in both phases of the game. He had an exceptional year. Really hard to find fault in the way he did play last year. So he was an easy one for me. Coming in at number 44 on the players list. Last year's number 1, Cam Newton. He absolutely did not find a place on my list. I can understand why he's on the players list. Of course, on his day, he's as impossible to defend as anyone in the league. That combination of elusiveness, running ability, as well as his arm. I mean, if he decides he's going to play his best game and executes, then as we saw the year before, bordering on impossible to defend. However, last year I think he really struggled. A lot of that falls down to his team, especially the offense. I feel the Panthers didn't perform as a whole, but I think the offense in particular was particularly poor. At times, turns out he was playing with a shoulder injury. I think you can certainly see that he's never been the most pinpoint accurate quarterback, but I think last year we saw a bit of a regression there towards early in his career when he was pretty scattershot, to be honest. Saw some bad mechanics, partly because of the amount of pressure that he had to face, some bad decision making. They weren't playing well for large portions of the season. I think he felt the need to try and carry the team, force some plays, did so, and it didn't necessarily work out. It just wasn't. Whilst he is a top 100 player in terms of his ability, but based on last year's performance, I just couldn't put him on the list. I thought he really wasn't particularly effective. Next year, certainly got a chance to redeem himself with some of the additions that they've made. If he can get some better protection and the team can just generally look like a more cohesive group offensively, then no doubt he's got an incredibly good chance of making this list. Once again, though, one of his teammates comes in at this spot, player that the players revealed a fair while ago. I believe he's possibly the most underrated tight end in football and has been for a while now. That is Greg Olsen. As I've said previously, he always kills the Buccaneers. I really dread to think what the Panthers offense would have looked like without him last year. He certainly was the only reliable option they had in the passing game. He's a great route runner. It reminds me a lot of Jason Witten, where whilst he's not the most physically imposing blocker, he certainly knows what he's doing and shows great effort in that regard, which you certainly cannot say for a lot of the top tight ends in today's game. Just finds ways of getting open. Very hard to defend in the zone. He'll find the soft spots, and even if he's you match it, a corner ends up coming into that zone, there's a good chance he's going to overpower the guy or catch the ball over the top of him. Very athletic in that regard. Got good catch radius and very good hands. Has made some great circus catches over the last few seasons. Exactly what you want from your receiving tight end. Maybe not the fastest guy in the league when you compare him to like your Tyler Eiferts, your Jordan Reeds of the modern game, but just such a consistent weapon. As I say, what I really dread to think of that passing game without him last year. Another 1,000-yard season. Great job from him. As long as he keeps it going, he'll keep making the list for me. Hell of a player. Coming in at number 43 on my list, Cowboys linebacker Sean Lee. There's never really been any questions about this guy's ability. He's just been injured all the time. Last year, I think he was clearly the standout player on, as I've said previous, many a time, a pretty average group in terms of talent level. Sean Lee is the one exception to that rule. He's an incredibly talented player. True sideline to sideline defender. Reads plays incredibly well. There are so many plays where he just diagnoses the run instantly. If the gap's there, he'll shoot it. He'll make the tackle. Also a very good coverage linebacker, which is they're worth their weight in gold in today's NFL. Gets that whole team organised. Very rarely misses tackles. Right place, right time, always around the ball, which is something that is often said about many a linebacker, but in this case it's very much true. I think they'd be significantly worse off without him. Organisation is a huge part of that defence last year, being as effective as it was. Clearly he understands the scheme that Rod Marinelli is running there. As a result, not a lot of mistakes. I think it's essential for the Cowboys to be as successful as they were last year that this guy stays healthy. I think he's one of the absolute top linebackers in this league, and I'm certainly interested to see how high he ranks on the players list if he's not already been revealed, which I don't believe he has. But again, that's something I'll discuss at another point. Oh, that's it. I didn't do my number 43 on the players list. Oh, and this one just makes me angry. Oh, number 43 on the players list. Sorry to do this out of order. It's been a long day. Very humid here. I hate humility. Number 43, Marshall Yonder. So, yeah, I mean, this guy, I mentioned this last week. I did a breakdown of the top 10 interior linemen in the league. I had Yonder at 2 behind Martin, and that was simply because of age. I think Martin is a bit more athletic, and because of his age, is probably the guy you would want if you were to pick any lineman in the league, well, any interior lineman in the league for your franchise right now. Yonder was number 2 for me. What was been supremely impressive about him over the last couple of years, when there's been injuries on the Ravens line, they've moved him about. It hasn't mattered. He's performed at an all-pro level. As strong a guy as there is in the league. Has been a great run blocker his whole career. Constantly improved in pass protection. There's no real fault in this guy's game. He's consistent, reliable, and generally dominating. One of my favourite guys to watch. Just heck of a player. This is far too low. I mean, if you're looking at last season, this is where my issues with these kind of lists come in. We get last year's Fitzgerald, still a good player, but some of the guys we've seen revealed. Zach Martin and Marshall Yonder, I think the consensus would be they were the best 2 guards in football last year. Maybe Kalichi Assembly enters that conversation for most. And you're putting Cam Newton, who had a really poor season, and Larry Fitzgerald, who's on the downside of his career, in this kind of thing. It's absurd to me. Marcus Mariota, you're going to say he's in the same class at this point as Marshall Yonder is. It's ridiculous. I mean, this guy's great. Much, much, much higher up on my list, as you guys will soon find out. I mean, it's great that he gets this much respect. He's probably the highest rated guard on this list, which is, fair enough. Fair enough. I can't argue too much with that. Spoiler alert, he is the highest rated guard on my list as well. So, there you go. But it just frustrates me. It really does. We'll stick to the players list then, since my little mistake. This is another one of those. Number 42, Jarvis Landry. Now, anyone who knows me, that includes my mate Chappers, who is a Dolphins fan, who you'll hopefully hear from at some point, hoping to get him involved in some of the podcasts I'm looking to do in the near future. Jarvis Landry is one of my favourite players in the league. However, to rank him here above, again, Jordan Nelson, I don't think Fitz should have been on the list, but ahead of guys like AJ Green. I know AJ Green got injured last year. He's just not at that level at this point. Essential to what the Dolphins do. I mean, without him, again, this is their reliable receiver. Devontae Parker hasn't evolved into a reliable guy yet. I think he's got the most talent there. Kenny Stills is the definition of an unreliable deep threat. He'll get open deep. Whether he's going to catch the ball, I don't know. Nor does anyone else until they see it happen. Landry, sure-handed, great route runner, great effort player, great after the catch. He's got a lot of strong attributes. He's a sort of guy that was pushing to get onto my list, but I don't think last season was his best. Certainly a good season, but I think the lack of success in the passing game overall hindered him somewhat. Fantastic player, but in my opinion, this is very much an overrating of him. I think his sort of relationship with Odell Beckham Jr. dating back to college has helped boost his profile, which is great because this is the kind of player that would otherwise probably fly massively under the radar. But I think this is far too high. If he'd been sneaking into the top 100 like he did last year, I think I could see that, because, as I say, I consider him towards the end of my list. But again, receivers constantly overrated on this list. And again, love Jarvis Landry. Hell of a player. Would love to see him. If I'm a fan, that's the kind of guy I want on my team. For my money, the best slot receiver in the NFL. But I can't put him there based on last year's production, and this is far too high for me. So myself, player number 42, again one of his teammates. It's a weird coincidence this week. A guy was revealed last week on the players list, so again we're fairly close on that one. Cameron Wake. I speak about Cameron Wake quite a lot because he's awesome, and I just remember him breaking onto the scene when he first turned up from the CFL. thinking, man, this guy's quick. His first step is incredible. No doubt he's going to be an effective speed rusher. I thought he'd just be a third down guy. Turned out, in spite of his size, dude could play the run. Far stronger than his size would suggest. Clearly, this guy is a monster in the gym. And even at his advanced age, he's still one of the toughest guys to defend. He's just continued to get better and better from a technique perspective. He's always been an effective technician. Great hand skills. When you're not got the length that he necessarily does, it's all about keeping the other guy's hands off you, because once they're on, you can't really do too much to fight off. He does a great job of that. He can just... Also, there's that ever-present threat of him just getting straight off the line and around the corner. Plays the run very, very well. Absolute monster. He could fall off at just about any point. He's had a few injuries the last few years, and he is approaching his mid-30s. I hope it doesn't happen. I enjoy watching him play. I think he's absolutely great, and a couple more years of production like this, he may have to start entering Hall of Fame consideration. I really do believe that. It's just unfortunate that the Dolphins haven't been great around him for much of his tenure there, but he really has been one of the best pass rushers in the league over the last 6 or 7 years. So, yeah, Cameron Wake, big fan. Player number 41, Devonta Freeman of the Atlanta Falcons, had a great year last season. Personally, I don't know if he cracked my list. I think he did. But he did, but he wasn't nearly as high up. There we go, I found Michael Bennett. He came in at 85 on my list. Would have been higher. Injuries are the reason he was that low. Freeman came in at 81. I think that's a fairer position for him than this. He was great. Of that, I've got no doubt. I just feel, again, this is a situation where he was just a cog in a machine that was the Falcons' offense last season. I don't think he was the primary reason for their success, not even necessarily the secondary reason for their success. Julio is, if you go to play the Falcons, Julio is threat number one. Then you've got to think about how you're going to get pressure on Matt Ryan with that great offensive line in place, because they've got some other weapons there. And then I think you start to think of Devonta Freeman. So he's probably threat number 3. Part of that is because how great they are, and I don't necessarily like underrating players as a result. I just feel like whilst he's as good in all phases of the game as any running back in the league, which is a wonderful trait to have, I'm not sure he's quite exceptional enough as a runner. I've seen him struggling in the past, perhaps when the offensive line hasn't been quite as effective as it is, or if teams are able to stack the box consistently. I don't think he is capable of taking over a game in the way that the absolute top running backs are. If you look at like David Johnson last season, or Adrian Peterson for most of his career, or Lynch for chunks of his career, taking over a game in spite of what the defense is doing. I'm not sure Freeman's that guy, which is why I had him a bit lower, but I do respect his ability in the passing game, his vision. I enjoy watching him run the ball. I like his running style. But as I say, I think team success is part of the reason he's this high up on the list. I've got a lot of respect for his game. He did make my list. I just personally feel this was a bit high. Myself coming in at number 41, a player who already came in on the players list. I think he was there 60 or 61. The lead leaguer in yards last season, as receiving yards, T.Y. Hilton of the Colts. Sorry, if you've been watching these, you're going to have heard some of this stuff before, because T.Y. Hilton is, anytime I talk about the Colts, I talk about T.Y. Hilton and Andrew Luck. And that's simply because, as you've heard, they would be nowhere without these two. The roster has been really poor over the last few years. Hilton is just one of those players, you see him on the field, just doesn't look like a football player. He's small. So is he 5'9"? Looks like he weighs about $160. Obviously weighs a bit more than that, but that's how it looks. But teams just can't defend him consistently. Exceptional quickness. What impresses me so much with him is his ability to get off the line of scrimmage and just get round guys. Often you'll see these smaller receivers getting manhandled, and that's one way of trying to take away the deep threat from them. He does an incredibly good job of just getting straight off the ball, before the defender can react and just get him around him. And if so, it's a touchdown. One of the faster guys in the league. Great route runner, great hands, made some circus catches last season. Clear he's got the trust of his quarterback, Andrew Luck. Because, when in doubt, he puts it up there for his tiny 5'9" receiver. And he goes and gets it. Great after the catch. He's just a heck of a player. He just doesn't look like he should be. One of the top deep threats in the league. For me, the top deep threat because of his behind maybe Antonio Brown or Julio. Possibly AJ Green. Maybe we'll go with the term home run threat because he can take any pass the distance. He's just behind sort of Julio and Antonio because his speed, his open field running ability, second to none. Can catch screens, take them to the house, can just beat players over the top, can take quick passes, things like slants. It's just very hard to defend this guy. Again, much like with Jordy Nelson, who I was discussing earlier, has a great understanding with his quarterback. Heck of a player. Really like watching him play. And he comes in at 41. I feel, it's what I mean. Like, just to quickly throw out there, I really do like Jarvis Landry. I mean, no disrespect to him, but to have him rated ahead of T.Y. Hilton last season, or any of the receivers that came on the list this week, Larry Fitzgerald and Jordy Nelson, I don't think any of them could, if you watch all the film, the closest would be Jordy Nelson, but none of them had a season better than T.Y. Hilton did. So, sometimes a bit. These are the ones that frustrate me. But there you go. There you have it. Let me know what you guys have thought of. Any thoughts on this particular episode or the list so far in general? Do you think the players have got it right and I'm just an idiot? Do you think vice versa? Whatever you think, let me know. Whether it's the comment section below, find us on Facebook, Cover Zero, find me on Twitter at Simon Conboy. Always more than happy to discuss stuff like this, especially because this kind of thing, everyone's got a different opinion. So, I like lists like these, to be honest, even if they do just appear to irritate me at times. So I'm more than happy to have that discussion. If you've enjoyed this episode, I recommend checking out the rest. I have done one for each episode that's been covered thus far. They do come up every Tuesday. This week I've got Cover Who coming up, where I talk about a player who I think's been forgotten somewhat since retirement. The Hall of very good caliber type of players. Also got a QB quandary I'll be discussing. What the Arizona Cardinals can look to do beyond this season to try and fix that QB position. And Friday will be a top 10 list for a current position group in the NFL, as well as the weekly review and news roundup. So check those out. Like, share, subscribe, check out the Patreon, all that good stuff. It'd be thoroughly appreciated. I appreciate you guys watching, as always. Been a pleasure. Thanks for your time. Have a great evening. And go Bucks.